date.
Today is April 6, 1985, and today is Aunt Angie's 70th birthday.
Oh no, 39.
39th birthday. And we decided that am I supposed to look at you or at the thing there?
Right here, you're looking at it.
Okay, and we're going to talk about the history of the Alfieris family. We're going to talk about Yaya and Papu and whatever they can remember about them. Is that all I need? Yeah, that's all I need to tell. Okay. Now switch over. All right. First, Papu. What were his parents' names? Papu's parents.
George and
Lula.
And he had how many brothers and sisters? And who were they?
4 brothers.
You know
Well, no, wait a minute. He didn't know if he had, we don't know about his brothers. You're talking about our grandfather.
Papu's. Your father. Your father's
Brothers.
brothers and sisters.
Okay. My father had 4 brothers and 1 sister. And the one child passed away young.
Which one?
Evangelos.
The brother? A brother?
One brother passed away young, Evangelos. Then he had Panagiotis, the eldest. John, who was second, that was my dad. Then he had Manoli, who was third. And then Bretos, who was the fourth. And then the daughter, somewhere in between, was Maria.
Maria. Okay.
Yeah, she was the youngest.
Okay, that was your grandfather's.
No, my father's brothers.
Your father, but this was your grandfather's children.
Yes,
your
right,
grandfather's
right,
children.
right.
George's children.
Right. Okay, now, do you know anything else about your grandparents that Yaya Papu might have told you? Did they tell you anything about where they lived or what they did for a living or anything
They
like
lived
that?
in Egypt.
Well, they were born and
there.
raised in Digo, in Kidera.
Born and raised in Kidera, and then from there, the father took the boys and went to Alexandria.
Egypt.
And then he brought.
Wait, I'm confused. Your grandfather took your father
Yeah, and his brothers.
to
Not all of them.
Most of the boys.
Well, the boys, yeah.
took all the boys to Egypt?
As they grew older, he took them
Yeah.
to Egypt for work.
Why?
For
To
work.
work because he started a
wanted to
business
pay-
over there.
But he had a restaurant, huh?
Your grandfather had a business in Egypt.
Mm-hmm. He
So
put up a business, and then he had the boys helping out and learning the trade.
and then they would go back to Greece again?
No.
No, they didn't go
They
back.
just
They
stayed
stayed
there.
in.
Well, no, they went back and forth. From
Well, they were going on trips. That's all.
on trips, back and forth. Alexandria, Kifira. It's not that far away. Alexandria, Kifira. Alexandria, Kifira. Did you know that?
No, I
Now you
didn't
know
know that. So he was a restaurant man.
And
Sweet shop.
Papu, my father, had fallen in love with our mother while they were teenagers in school.
And so
In-
Papu,
in
but
that-
Papu met Yaya in Kifira.
Oh, yeah, they grew up.
They grew up
But
together.
later on,
Wait a minute, let's not rush it.
Okay.
though. Because Papa's town was Potamos. It was a big town. It's the biggest town on the island. It isn't the capital of Kifira.
1 block.
It's the biggest town in Woodlock. And Mama's town was Cristoforianica.
Very close together.
And it was a donkey's trot away, you know, where they use donkeys to get back and forth to the villages.
We drive in 5 minutes now.
Yeah. So but they all went to one school.
But they went to one school.
One school on the island with all the children from the.
So Yaya and Papu knew each other when they were very small.
When they were little.
They were very much in love.
Okay, now I'll take it from there.
Yeah.
My mother told me that being that my grandmother, Efrosini, was a widow, when my mother was about 14, she sent her to live with an aunt in Egypt. And this is how the romance flourished between my father and my mother.
Stronger.
And my grandfather George, who my mother disliked very much,
Yeah, on the other side.
was very...
You mean her father-in-law?
Yeah.
Yes, because
She
he
didn't
did not want her to marry my father because she had no prica, no dowry.
Not only that, but he had a single daughter. My mother told me this.
I know what she told me. You say what she
late
told me.
years, she was telling me how much she hated her father-in-law because of the fact that his sister was single. She was not married. He was only 19 years old. My father was, and so was my mother. And so they went ahead and went to the bishop to have the bishop give them a date to get married, and they notified his father to come that the wedding would be such and such a date. He goes to the church And he tells the bishop, you are not, I forbid this wedding. And the bishop said, why? Why do you forbid this wedding? And he says, well, he's got a single daughter that he has to help get married. And he said, I'm sorry, that's not a good reason not to marry them. And he went and married them, and the father-in-law did not talk to them until their firstborn came along, which was named George after him.
George was
And
the
to this
first.
day,
First child.
each son of my grandfather, who had a firstborn or a son and named him George, they all had a George, but there's only one surviving. They all died.
One George.
Bad luck, like my mother's
Yeah.
George died at 9 months old
Dan.
Yeah, from pneumonia.
from
Okay, let's go back. What year was Yaya and what year was Papu born in? Do you know?
You
I
got
wish
They're
Harry
same
was
year,
here. Harry's got a
1884.
fantastic
Harry knows.
memory.
Okay, so
1884
1884, and Yaya, what? What do you
same
think?
year, same year.
They're
They're both the same age. They were
Who
six
was born
months.
in February? Ya was born in
September.
September of
6
that
months
same
later.
year.
Okay,
Stays
All right.
More than 6 months.
so, okay, now we've got Papu's mother and father, George and Spitigula. Now let's talk about Yaya's mother and father.
Okay, that was Caralambina, they
How
call
to
it.
be now.
All we know was that Yaya's father, she never knew him because he was lost at sea when she was a very, very young child.
Was he a sailor?
He was a
A
fisherman.
fisherman? Okay,
He was a fisherman.
all right.
And Yaya's mother raised her children by herself by looking into the, working in the fields and doing weaving. She did a lot of weaving.
Yeah.
Ooh.
What else do you want to know?
All right, now. Okay, so what was her father's name?
Caralambos.
And what was her mother's name?
Efrosini.
Efrosini. Okay, I got that backwards. Okay. All right, now, did she tell you anything else about? Did they ever tell you anything else about her parents besides the fact that her father was lost at sea and that her mother raised all the kids with
Well,
weaving? What else did she tell you?
Our Yaya died when she lived up to 103.
107.
Yeah.
107 was it?
Absolutely.
That was 103.
You kids are all learning something tonight, and this will be on
She was 107 when she was 80. Furthermore,
history of
when she was 80,
God.
she lost her sight.
Yes, she became.
But she still did her spinning. She had her, they used to take the cotton and
Yeah.
with a
She made
spinning
thread.
wheel. And
She made thread with a
she
spinning
made
wheel.
thread and she made bedspreads and things like that, even though she had
No sight.
no
No
sight.
sight.
What I do remember of Yaya telling me of her childhood was lots of times she says her mother would get her up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and she says she was no bigger than that, and she'd have to get up and she'd have to go out and get the wool out of the somewhere where they had them hidden. They didn't have them in the house. Their houses weren't that big.
Had to go downstairs.
And she had to go out into the cold, into the other barn to bring in the wool so she could get it ready so her mother could put it on the spinning wheel.
And then
That's
after
what I
she
do remember my mother telling me about
She
her
told us the
childhood.
story.
Yeah.
and then after she wove this, she didn't weave the cloth. She made
She made the
She
thread,
made
and
the
then she
thread,
made thread, she
and
made the
then
cloth.
and
then
then
she would
she
weave
would
the cloth.
sell it to whom?
People would buy it.
People there. They,
People in the village?
in the village.
In Kitara.
Mhm.
Yeah,
In Kitara.
Right.
Kitara is a beautiful island. It's a good-sized island.
So how many children were there left? How
Well, let's see, Mama
she
had-
the father was dead, and there were how many children? Because you
All
said
right,
they
Mama
had
had one sister and
I don't know,
Two
remember her
brothers.
name. Maria, wasn't, no. What was her
her
name?
sister's name was Kirani.
Kirani. And then she had two brothers.
Brothers, Panagiotti,
That's the one that.
And Angelo.
Marries Leonis.
Leonis' father, and the other one, that's
Angelo.
Angelo's father. And the
Not
other one
Angelo.
from...
No,
Yes,
Angelo Clinton.
Clinton's
father.
That's his
Oh,
father.
his father.
Yeah, Diamandi.
He was the other one in Los Angeles.
Now wait a minute, I'm confused. You said Panagiotti was one of the brothers, and the other brother was.
Now wait a minute, you're talking about
I'm
my...
talking about Yaya's brothers and sisters.
Okay, I guess this Panagiotti was my father's brother.
No, I'm talking about Yaya's two brothers.
Okay.
No, Panagiotti was Mama's brother too, Capitano.
Was his name Panagiotti? I didn't know.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know his first name. You know,
Peter.
it's Capitano. And the other one down south was...
Diamandi.
Diamandi. Diamandi.
So
Yeah, that's what I
his
said.
son
Yeah.
was Angelo. Is Angela, was Angela.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Panagiotis took Angelo and another son and came to this country and left the two girls, Florence and Maria, in Iquisira.
Okay, all right.
I have a darling letter that we
Okay.
found in Lula's
Yeah. the
papers there,
papers.
dated 1915, written by my
letter.
mother's mother. No, the one in 1919 states the fact that the girls want to come to their mother into this country.
Oh my.
And
There's a lot of history here.
come on, speak up.
You
Okay,
can't
so-
get it all down
Okay,
for
so you know that,
I've
that
got a
question I'll
question.
answer.
All right,
You're
yes,
talking
ma'am.
about the letter being written in 1919.
Okay.
In the interim between when the, let me think of this straight. Your mother and
Oh,
your
we did,
father
yeah.
went to Alexandria in 1919. There
They
was
got married, right?
one war between Greece and Turkey. There was a second war between Turkey, Greece against Bulgaria. And there's World War I. What was happening? in the
Nothing was
family?
mentioned
Nothing's
about
mentioned
any
about
war.
those.
So
Anything about this?
evidently they had no problem.
Because your family was subjected to the draft. You had Greece was involved in 3 wars.
Well, they were, don't
They
forget now, they
indicate.
were not in Greece, and they were not in Turkey or any of those places, they were in Egypt. And in
But
Egypt,
they
I guess,
made-
they didn't
but-
take the Greeks out of Egypt.
But they made a point of coming back periodically for visits, and the Greek government has a habit of drafting.
Well,
Yeah, but in the meantime, not my father, because my father and mother, well, they had Gus, after the one they lost, they had Gus, and Gus was 13 months old, or,
Gus was 2 years
He was
old.
2 years old.
and
And
she
Lula was pregnant 5 months old when my dad
Mama
had
was
the-
pregnant 5 months
Yeah,
old,
yeah. And you say it. You
Yeah,
want
well,
to
no,
think
you
of
said
Florence.
Lula was pregnant, she was a baby, she wasn't born.
Well, yeah.
I was
I was
on
in
the
the-
way saying it.
Pope Yaya was pregnant with Lula.
With Lula.
Lula
Lula
for
was
five
pregnant,
5 months pregnant.
Okay, all right.
And Papu came to America
To see if he liked it.
to work for, was it his brother-in-law?
Brother-in-law, I think.
Yeah.
Somebody.
Anyway, to San Francisco, and he couldn't bring the family because he had to find a place for them to live in first. So he came over and he found a place to live in. Lula was about, I think you were about,
6 months.
no, you were about 5 months old, and Gus was 2 years old. Is there that much difference between you?
No, I was
No.
6 months old when he came to America.
Less than a
Okay,
year,
then-
isn't there?
Huh?
Less than a year.
How much difference between you and Gus?
Not too much. About
A year,
and a half.
Yeah, well, I was
13
right,
months.
because I remember Yaya telling me he was 2 years old and Lula was
6 months.
well, 6 months, okay. But she was going to travel with her brother Yamandi and his wife for company to come to Greece, to San Francisco, okay? When they got to Naples, Italy, evidently the wind or something, my brother Gus's eyes were red. And they thought it was pink eye, and they quarantined him. So my mother had to stay in Naples for 15 days and had to travel to America by herself.
And Diamandi went on.
Diamandi and his wife went on. So here she gets on this ship with 2 infants, so
Both
to
in
say.
diapers.
2 little babies, okay. 2 little babies. And she was telling me the hardship. It took her 3 months to get to San Francisco.
3 months.
By
3
boat.
From
months
Naples.
by boat. Then when she got to Ellis Island, she had this beautiful suitcase full of Lola's beautiful
clothes.
hand
You
embroidery
didn't mention how
clothes,
She lost them.
and she lost them all.
Yeah, but you didn't say that somebody on the
Oh.
ship had held her tickets for her. Plane ticket checks for her stuff.
Oh, so.
So when she got into New York, she couldn't find him. There was such a crowd
Lost
that she
that.
couldn't find her check, and she could see all her trunks, and she'd say, "Those are mine." And she spoke Italian, she spoke Arabic.
How? How did she learn these languages?
Now wait a
Because they're
minute.
living in
She
there.
learned Italian in America because she told me.
In Italy.
In Italy. She
Picked
stayed
it
in
up in
Italy for
Italy.
so many weeks.
2 weeks.
In 2 weeks.
Well, it's-
Arabic from.
Wait, that's real
we're
important
not going to
because
argue
if,
on
if that's
tape,
not
so-
real important because
Yeah.
if our family is part Italian,
That's right.
It
all right,
could be
if our
easy.
family is
The
part
Alfieris
Italian,
goes
then
back.
Yaya must have been exposed to some Italian people in Kisera.
No, honey.
No.
That goes
There
way.
was
You're
no-
thinking, honey. You're thinking way back in the days of.
There was no
Venetian.
Italian culture in Kisera
But
at
you-
all. Nothing at all. As
Not
far
that
as
we
you
know
know.
of Italian.
None at all.
So as
None
far as you
at
know,
all.
Yaya
Aside
did-
from what they left behind them.
See, you're going
buildings
way
that
back
were
in the
built.
I know,
15th
I know,
century.
yeah.
Buildings that were built.
But she
like-
did pick up the language in Italy, and that's how she was able to converse.
And how did she learn
Well, she
Arabic?
told you that.
in
She
Egypt?
told me
In
Egypt.
Egypt. Oh, a lot of
Okay,
that.
now there's one question that I want, that getting back to what Andy said. If If they were in Egypt, if Yaya and Papu were in Egypt when they got married, which was what year?
19, where's Vicky? Vicky, what year? You got it down? No, 19.
Well, they were 19.
Oh,
They
three.
got married.
Nineteen
yeah.
oh
June of 19, June 12th of 1903.
That's right, because my dad came here in
We took
1906,
Yeah.
after the
Well,
earthquake.
then she must have had all of the first 4 kids real close.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, well, she
No, the
had.
first 3, honey.
No.
The first one she lost, the
So,
Then my
second one
soul.
Gus, and the third one Lou. And then she came here. The rest of us were all born here in Oakland.
No, what I'm saying, she must have had the children all very close.
2
Because
years
Mama
apart.
was born 1910.
One and a
7
half
years after.
years.
Some
2
are
years apart.
less than 2 years, some are just
Now,
2
your
years.
mom and I are the furthest apart of the whole slew.
No.
So Mama,
Okay, so now what
Over
happened?
3 years.
Meanwhile, Papu's father still has the restaurants in
Right.
Egypt
In Egypt.
and stayed there, and his other brothers stayed there
That's
with
right.
the restaurant.
Yes.
Papu was the only one to come over.
to this country,
This country.
That's
Papu was
right.
the only brother that came over.
That
to
left.
America, to the United States.
Do you know why?
Well, he
Didn't have the guts again.
he wanted to.
No, the others by
no.
that time might have even been Australia for all we
And
know.
eventually, later.
Oh wait, what do you mean Australia? You mean some of them?
Now, wait a
went to
minute.
Australia?
Oh.
Yeah, some of the
Two
brothers.
of the
I
brothers-
don't remember who.
2 brothers were established in
They went to
Australia.
Australia.
Wellington, Australia.
And they
Are you
went
sure
there.
it's not New Zealand?
Who?
Are you sure it's not New Zealand? Wellington is...
No, the picture says Wellington, Australia.
The picture says that, but I know Papu and Yayao said they were, maybe this was later on, you know, after the picture was taken years ago. But they always mentioned Sydney and Osborne.
Well, they were close, and
Yes.
they were all.
Sydney
yeah.
and
So
Osborne.
now did those two brothers leave for Australia before Papu left?
We have no idea.
No, after
Anything
they.
about that?
No, after. After, because one of them was much younger. Must have been about 8 years younger.
So we can't talk too much about our,
Because they didn't know. You
because we
didn't know.
never met them, we never,
We didn't know.
you know.
In fact, the one, is this pointing over here anywhere? What are you doing? You taking anything?
Yeah.
The one brother, the second from the youngest, passed away young,
Manoli.
Manoli. And he had 3 sons.
Okay.
George, that's the only surviving George, that's named after their grandfather.
All right.
George, Mitso, and Theodore, which they call him Ruli. They have moved back to Phileas, and they are in the solar system
Business.
business.
Well, they
And
must.
he
they
has 2 sons.
They're
and
your
George-
age, right? No.
They have their
Yeah,
own
they're
kids next to us, because they got married later.
Oh.
All my cousins are much younger than we are, majority, except for my dad's oldest brother. There are some that Flo's age and my age, but the other,
Kids.
Good for you.
Little kids, what do you call them?
yeah, the other brothers then are, the other nephew, cousins that we have, the first cousins are all younger, much younger. Cute too.
Hey, you guys, you're the
Do you
parties.
have any idea why Papu didn't go to Australia? Do you have any
Maybe wasn't
idea?
even mentioned
Well,
at that
first
time.
of all,
Here. I mean, didn't you have to have a
he had a
sponsor?
relative in San Francisco, as I said,
Okay.
I can't remember who it was.
That's the way to know.
Yamandis.
Diamandi.
Yeah. And I wanted to correct you then, but you were going.
Yeah,
on.
you were carrying on.
Yeah, I
She
didn't
came over
know.
with her
Look into
brother,
the camera.
Pete, Peter.
Look into the camera.
No,
When
she,
they came to America,
when Papu came, you mean?
Mama traveled with her brother, Peter.
Pete, no.
Peter. Yamandi was already here.
Now, you just said a little while ago that Yaya traveled over here for 3 months by herself because her brother had to go on because Uncle Gus had pink eye.
Yeah, she had to stay in Italy until he was cleared up.
So then Yaya came over by herself. But who was Papu's sponsor? Why did he come to America? He had to have had a sponsor.
He
You
did.
can't-
He had a job all set for
Seek
him.
his fortune.
in San Francisco.
In those days, it
He
wasn't
had
as
somebody to
strict as
come to. He
now.
had,
Ready? Yep. Okay, Aunt Lula, tell me your birthday and where you were born.
1907, March 1st. And I was born in Egypt,
Look up, don't look down.
Alexandria.
Alexandria.
Look at the camera.
And you stayed there for how long with Yaya and Papu?
We stayed there, Papu had left for America. And we stayed there, I think it was 3 months, because it took her 2 months to come over.
Okay. So you were 5 months old
5 months old when 6 months old when we arrived into
at Ellis Island.
Ellis Island, so I was 4 over there. We left when I was 4 months old.
Okay, 6 months. So did you came with Yaya and Uncle Gus, just the three of you,
That's
and you
right.
came to Ellis Island, you went to San Francisco from Ellis Island?
No, I can't.
It's too shiny in the,
Well,
So you
put
went,
the light
you went from
on.
Ellis, you went from Ellis
shine the light
Island
up to the,
to San
to
Francisco.
San Francisco. And did you stay in San Francisco? Do you know if Yaya stayed
No,
there?
we stayed in Oakland. That's where they had rented a home.
And Papu was in Oakland waiting for you?
Waiting at the station for us.
So then, what is your earliest recollections? The farthest back you can go.
Farthest
What
back
do you
I could
remember?
go. I remember as a child, around 4 or 5, we used to get together for the Easter picnics.
Do you remember where?
Easter
Do
picnics.
you remember where they were?
Let's see, what's that place?
Oakland Hills.
Oakland Hills. But the home's built there now.
It's right near Fox Boulevard where they have the
That's
golf
the one,
course.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
No homes there, nothing.
And you remember Easter picnics there when you were 4 or 5?
Right. And, my uncle and his family and the other uncle.
Oh, so it's family time.
And it was mostly a family picnic.
So do you remember at 4 or 5 where you were living? In
On
Oakland?
7th Street,
And do
near
you,
Broadway.
7th Street near Broadway? And then from there, where did they go?
From there, we moved to 24th and Chestnut.
No,
We went
Albany,
first.
and then been to Chestnut Street.
Albany? You went to
That's
the
right,
city
that's
of
where
Albany?
Albany.
Right.
See, I don't remember everything. The girls remember.
So you lived in Albany after 7th Street, and you went to school in Albany?
Chestnut Street, they bought their first home.
Okay, so they bought their first
My
home
parents bought their
after the
first
First World War.
That's right.
Okay, so then, as far as you know, 24th and Chestnut Street was the
First
home,
home they bought.
the first home, and they
that
stayed there
our
for a long
parents
time?
bought
They stayed there until they lost the home in the Depression.
during the Depression.
Because on account of the taxes.
$25 a month payment they could not make. They lost 3 payments and they lost their home.
I thought it was the taxes.
Now, did Papu, from the time that, from the time that you had, from the time that you can remember, did Papu always have the restaurant in Oakland?
No, not all the time. He did the carpenter work and wallpapers
He was really a
and
jack of all
painting.
trades.
He was really a jack of all trades like that.
But didn't he eventually get into a restaurant that was his own?
Oh, yes.
Yes, he had a restaurant. He had a candy store.
And this was all in
And I
Oakland?
remember I was 8 years old
Everything
and
in Oakland.
people would give me money and I'd go there and go like this. And I'd look and see what I wanted, and what I wanted was jelly beans. So I gave him the money and I got the jelly beans.
So he had a candy store, and he
That's
did a
right.
jack of all trades, did everything
Got
that he
into a
could do.
restaurant after that.
Okay.
And then after we grew up a little bit, he did carpenter work.
Well, during the Depression, he worked for the Athens Baking Company.
Yes. Did
That was in
drive-
the 30s.
And Harry,
Driving the truck and delivering the,
yeah, Harry worked for the Athens Baking Company.
Did Yaya work?
yes, she did.
When you were a child, she worked?
She was married.
She was married and, let's see, I was married. I was married too when she went to work.
Oh, okay.
Because we were all small, you know. And she went to work
Del Monte Cannery.
at the Del Monte.
Yeah, Del
In
Monte
San
Cannery.
Leandro, is that, or East Oakland?
Yes,
No,
Emeryville.
it was up
Oh,
on,
yeah, oh,
Emeryville.
okay.
Emeryville.
All right. So,
She worked there for quite a while.
so when you started school, by the time you started school, Yaya had already had Harry
All the children
and
except,
Alice.
yeah, all the children except Milton.
Oh, everybody was born
Yeah.
at that time. Okay. And then you stayed in school until the 6th grade, you said?
I went as far as the 6th grade.
And then why didn't you go any further?
I cried and I did a lot and sighed and everything, but there was too much work at home to be done
To help with it.
and I had to stay home and help.
Now, Yaya wasn't working then?
No,
Okay, but there was too many kids.
but the children, there was too many, so I had to stay home.
And Uncle Gus was working and earning money and out of the house, right?
Yes.
I was going to
Paper
school,
route,
obviously.
stuff like that. He was pretty young himself.
Did Uncle Gus go to the 6th grade?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
I think that's as far as he went.
He's for as far as
He
the 6th grade.
finished the grammar school.
Yeah, 6th grade.
Okay. Then you stayed home and took care of the kids.
The children did housework.
Yeah.
Okay. Now when did you ever get a job while you were a teenager?
While I was I was around 14 when the ice cream,
Yeah,
I think it was
Miller's.
Miller's ice cream,
Yeah, Miller's is what it was.
wanted some help. And somebody knew the manager in there, and they came by and said, "Would you like to work?" So I went to work there,
That was at
learned how to
the
do it.
corner from our house, wasn't it?
Right on the corner, just a half a block.
Now this was before 1920.
No, this is after.
Now you said it was the house on
In
Chestnut.
the 20s. This is when we moved to Chestnut Street. We
24
had moved into Chestnut Street by now.
Oh, okay. So
And Milton was born in 1922.
okay. So the house on Chestnut, 24th and Chestnut, was the first house that Yampapu bought.
That's right.
The one that they lost during the Depression,
Right.
but they had it during this time that we're talking about.
That's
They
right.
had it, yes.
Okay, all right. Then once they lost the house, at the time that they had that house, you were working and
Right.
taking care of the kids, I guess part-time,
Helping
right?
out, yes.
Okay. So then they lost the house on 24th and Chestnut. And where did the family go then?
By this time,
We,
Alice was married. You gotta get rid of some of them. Alice was married. Florence was married, living in Fresno.
Right.
By what year is this?
Oh, no. We were married what year?
We lived on Linden Street then.
Okay.
Well, we
I'm
left
talking
Chestnut-
about the time that Aunt Lula's about 14 to 16 years old.
Okay, take her birthday. What's your birthday?
I gave it to her.
Okay, 1907, let's say she's 16 years old, so that would make it 1923, 1933, 1923, right. So 1923 we're talking about. So you were working at Miller's,
At
and you were
Miller's.
helping Yaya at home. They lost the house on Chestnut Street. Then what happened? Where did the family go?
What after they lost the house, they moved in with me.
No, you're.
This was a few years
You
later.
jumped a
You
few
jumped
years.
a few years, you see, because you were working at Miller's. How many years were you working at Miller's? What year did you get married?
I don't remember.
26. She got married in 1926?
1926.
Okay, Aunt Lou, let's go
There
back
you
a
are.
little bit. You were working at Miller's when you were 14.
Right.
You started when you were 14. And how old were you when you got married?
I wasn't quite 18.
Okay, so in 4 years you were married,
Right.
quite from the time you started working. So then Yayampapu moved from their house on 24th and Chestnut to
To Linden Street.
Linden Street. Okay, Linden Street. And that was a house that they bought, or
No, this house I was renting.
you were renting?
Wasn't that right, Aaron?
Yeah, she was renting the house and we all moved in together. Well, she had to be married. I said she was married.
Yeah. Okay, so Yayampapu moved in with you and your
That's
husband.
I got all these days.
Okay,
Yeah, but why
now
did
I
they say
see.
they lost
Okay.
the house
In the 30s.
you guys?
In the 30s, they lost the house.
Linden Street, I was married 30 and I got married from Linden
From
Did
Linden
you
Street.
turn it off for a while while we
You were
argued?
living.
No, that's good. Let's talk. No, go ahead and talk.
We want to get your true personalities
Go ahead
there.
and talk about it. Okay.
We were not on Chestnut Street.
Not when you were married.
Now,
I mean, you were married on Chestnut.
I certainly
This
was
is
not.
recorded for
okay,
posterity.
wait. Okay, now get this straight. 1930-31 was the Depression, the height of the Depression, right?
Yes.
You told me that Yayampapu lost it at the Depression. 'cause
In
they
the middle of the
couldn't
Depression, about 32,
Before the
33.
Depression.
All right. So Aunt Lula was already married.
And Lula was already married. Alice was married in 1928.
Okay.
We
She
had
was married in
the,
1931.
we had the wedding
30 or
reception
30.
in the house on 24th.
Okay, so you got married at 18 in 1925, right? Then Yayampapu moved into the house with you and your husband and all the children, right?
All the children.
Not all the children.
Wait a minute.
Not all the children,
Russian.
no. Okay, because there
The
were
Russians were eliminated because some got
Uncle
married.
Gus
got
wasn't
married.
around. Okay, all right. So Uncle
So there was
Gus,
Milton and there was Angie.
all right.
Alice was married.
No, she wasn't.
Well, let's get it straight. Yeah, Aunt Lula gets married in 1926. When did Alan Alice get married?
1928.
1928. And then Coco?
1931, I think.
31. My parents were married in 1937, I think. That was much later. Yeah. Okay. So you're talking 1931 for you. And you're-
1940.
Okay, but you're not. We're
And
still.
I remember Alice being engaged at Linden Street, because I remember that as clear as the day.
I beg your pardon.
Okay.
Flo, you are so mistaken.
Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
Well, I know Fofo got married in Fresno, right?
Flo was in Fresno.
Yeah, but I lived in Linden Street.
Yeah,
They
but you-
came there, I
No.
got engaged.
Yeah, on
here.
Chestnut Street, we had this house that had just so many rooms, and in each room, so many kids slept. Because most of us were single still at the time.
3 of us girls slept in one of the double
And
beds.
sometimes 5 in a bed. And then we had the pull-outs.
Don't forget now, this
How
house.
Depression years.
Yeah, right, I know.
Or even just before Depression too, it was not,
Right,
it was
sure.
not surplus money in our bank.
Now, this
And-
24th and Chestnut is part of West Oakland, right? It's
At
part
that
of,
time, it was a medium class.
well, wasn't it
class.
mostly Greeks or not?
No,
You're talking
Seventh-
about 7th Street. This
That
is
area was
24th
the
and
Greeks.
26th.
Okay.
So Alice, the Sackuses brought Alice's husband-to-be, when we lived on Chestnut Street, to meet Alice. Because I remember so definitely going to the toilet and pulling the chain. Because on Linden Street, we had a modern toilet with a handle. So we were on Chestnut Street. No, my memory is very, very sharp.
Okay, let's get back to Aunt Lula. When you got married, Aunt Lula, Yaya Papu picked your husband for you?
No.
No?
No.
You picked your own husband.
It was our own fault.
Did you have, did you get, did you,
Early.
did you, you started early.
I was 14
Oh my gosh.
when I was spoken for.
Really? You're 14?
Uh-huh.
How old was your husband?
Well, let's see, Thomas was about 12 or 13 years old.
Did you have a big wedding?
You wrecked her off her feet.
It was a big wedding.
Considered a big wedding in those days, yeah.
And where did you get married? What church? Where?
At the Brush Street Church.
Brush Street existed then in 1926?
Yeah, it was built in 1921.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
remember
Yeah,
the date.
1921.
Yeah, that's
Don't
right.
ask me
It
to
was
remember
built in-
dates.
yeah.
Okay, so you got married in the Oakland church
Uh-huh.
to a man who was 12 years older than you,
Right.
and you were 18 years old. Okay.
I was married in January and I was 18 in March.
Okay. And tell me about your wedding. I mean, did you have the whole Greek community there? What happened?
Well,
How did it go?
lots of all the relatives
Friends.
and close friends.
Okay.
I could say easy about 50, 60 people.
Which was a big group then. You know, nowadays it's considered small.
Did you have to have a dowry?
No.
No. How come?
But she's beautiful.
I mean, you're talking about coming from a culture where Yaya's generation had to have dowries, but that didn't go here,
No,
right?
No
didn't
way.
matter.
Didn't matter.
They left.
Yeah.
It was
that's right.
love. It was love that they.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay, so now we're talking about 1926. You're married, and you got the house on Linden Street. Yaya and Papu.
Berkeley.
No, not yet, honey. We
tell her where
moved
she
to Berkeley.
Well, yeah, I know, but I mean, we were talking about the house on Linden Street when Yaya and Papu moved in with you, and they had an Angie, and Fofo, and
You weren't
Milton.
divorced yet. When we moved in, you weren't divorced yet. You came to live with us later when you got divorced.
I got married very soon after we went
Yeah,
to
you said 1928, right?
me.
Yeah.
30.
30 for
Oh, 30.
31.
I'm not sure if it's 30.
You came with the kids to live. You didn't live with.
Way afterwards.
Yeah, so that was after we moved in that she came, when she was divorced, she lived with us.
Oh, okay.
I was still single,
Okay.
but she had divorced. I don't remember what year it was, but she had got divorced.
Now, how did you handle divorces? I mean, you're
A lot of
talking about a
tears,
time
a lot
where
of fighting,
you're
and-
talking about a time when
That
divorce
would
was
take,
not.
that would take at least
another whole
3
tape.
hours.
Okay, well, what, let's make it brief.
It's a long story.
No, I'm not saying tell me all the details. I'm saying, asking
Now, you
this.
want to jump from her to me now?
No, I want to ask two of you because both of you were divorced. In a time when, like today, it's very easy to get a divorce and it's almost expected. Okay, it's no big deal. But in those days, it was a big deal. Okay? How did you feel about yourselves getting divorced, and how it would reflect on your parents, on your
Pretty
family,
bad,
and all that?
but it
Was it a
reflected-
really terrible thing to happen?
It was.
Unhappy in her case,
In her case,
another woman.
he wanted the divorce.
In her case, she was very happy.
Except, he made it hell for me to get a divorce. Then I had all the beautiful people, the president of the GAPA, the president, the priest, My mother, my father, he came, and I had him just perfect when I finally sued for divorce.
What a story.
Oh, before that, I only left him 20 times, but anyway, they were all in this room, and they were telling me that I had 2 children, and I'd have to, think about it before getting a divorce. And I said, well, my life's unbearable here. I can't live like this.
Good.
And here he is on the floor, on his knees. And I said, besides, the leopard never changes its spots. And here he is, this leopard will change its spots. Tears running down his eyes. Get the poor priest feeling sorry for him.
Were you the only person who decided you were the only person who didn't want the marriage and you stood your ground?
I stood my ground. I went to a lawyer. I had everything tied
With
up.
all these
I had
people
money.
around you and a crying husband in front of you?
Yeah.
She was still a kid, but she was strong-willed.
I was strong-willed.
And she knew what a miserable life she had.
How old were you?
Oh, well, what was I then? Because I would stay with
Still in their early 20s.
about 23, 24.
Very early
There,
20s,
My
yeah.
kids were 2 and 3. And I had one 10 months after I married and one 14 months after. So,
Wow.
to make a long story short,
Divorce.
all these good people talked me into dropping it. And the lawyer had tied everything up. I might have got something. You know what I got out of it?
Goodwill.
$750 finally when I went, because I came to Oakland. I dropped the divorce suit because he couldn't touch his bank account, he couldn't touch anything.
Right.
So I dropped the divorce suit, came to Oakland. I said, when you find a home, and you prove yourself, I'll come back and try to raise my children. Because, divorce was a big,
I know, that's why I'm
big deal.
asking this question.
Right. So stupid Flo let it drop. So I went back. I came to my folks and lived with my folks. And he started pulling the same old shenanigans. He did, and then finally I had it. So I never went back to Fresno. I got a lawyer here, but it took 2 years before I could get a divorce because every time it had to be heard in Fresno, being I
Oh,
lived
yeah, right, yeah.
okay? Every time I went to Fresno, shaking in my boots. Dirty Vanis couldn't come to court today because he's very ill.
Excuse
Pulled
me.
it on that 3 times. Then it went back 6 or 8 months on the calendar.
Were Yaya and Papu on your side about this?
Yeah.
point?
Oh, yes.
May I remind her of something? You left during the night.
Middle of the night, she said.
Oh, I didn't tell you how I left Fresno.
She saved her nickels and dimes.
No, the nickel that didn't mean nothing. Was getting out of the house from that
I know, but how
witch
did
of
you
a mother-in-law. That's a great story.
That's when she got the toughest time.
Oh, this was something else. We had an old President Studebaker. I think it was a 32 Studebaker. When it was long, with a running torch. And here I had 2 kids. Harry wasn't quite, he wasn't even 2, and John was about 3, okay? I was upstairs in this house, which looked like Noah's Ark on the country.
She was on the 2nd floor.
I remember that. And immediately at the foot of the stairs, in the next room, my mother-in-law and father-in-law slept. Okay, now I knew I had to get out of there on the QT, otherwise they'd stop me. So the children were all asleep. In the meantime, I dressed them in their little pants and suits. I had packed 2 suitcases. I tiptoed all the way down the stairs, took the suitcases out into the car, came back and got one little kid, carried him all the way down the stairs, fast asleep, put him in the car, tiptoed all the way up the stairs again, brought the next one down, and drove to the bus depot, got my tickets for the boys and myself. Then I called up my ex-husband and told him, well, if you want your car, it's down at the bus depot.
You had gone down further than Fresno to leave the car.
No.
You were afraid that he was going to come.
No, I was down at the Fresno depot, and I waited about 5 minutes before the bus was going to take off before I called for him to come and get his car. And he thought I was kidding. He said, what do you want me to bring home for, do you want me to bring home some hamburger? Just bring home anything you want, I'm leaving.
He was still at the Cozy Inn.
Yeah, the Cozy Inn Cafe. So, like I said, it took me a long, long time. I lived with my mother about 2 years before I finally got my divorce. And by that time, he had everything sewed up, just the way he wanted it. In fact, he wrote letters. He even had a doctor send me a letter, a lawyer rather, send me a letter that telling me that Harry had childhood tuberculosis, and I was a very cruel mother for having him here in the Bay Area, and I should bring him back to Fresno where the weather was warm. So with that, I took my son and I went to a doctor, and I had him examine him from the top of his head to the tip of his toes. And that doctor was so angry, he immediately sat down and wrote that lawyer a letter telling him that there was no sign of tuberculosis in this child, and what were they trying to pull. So I never heard no more on that score.
Now, when you went to go live with Yaya and Papu, you took the boys with you,
Right.
and you lived for 2 years with Yaya, right?
Well, more than that.
Yeah.
More than that.
Oh, yeah.
Before she got a
It
divorce.
took me 2
Oh,
years to get my
okay.
divorce.
All right.
But she
Okay.
stayed with her.
Okay.
But I stayed
Till
with
she
her for a
remarried
long
again.
time.
Now, what
6
about you,
years.
Aunt Lula? Did you go back to Yaya, to living with Yaya and Papu when you got your divorce?
No.
Oh, you lived
We had moved to San Francisco.
and you stayed in San Francisco by
And we
yourself?
stayed in San Francisco.
And you had,
I had my 2 children at Linden. No, let's see, Nick was born at Chestnut. And I had my children at Linden Street address.
okay, so
And then
you,
we moved to San Francisco
Yeah, the newspaper,
because
didn't
my husband had the newspaper at the time,
he?
newspaper? What newspaper?
the Prometheus.
The Greek newspaper,
Greek,
Prometheus.
Prometheus.
Was it a community, just a
That was
community?
Yeah, it was
California.
like the Greek newspaper, the Atlantic, you know.
He created the newspaper?
No, he took over.
Oh,
And he was managing, linotyping, and he was writing the articles. He was a writer, he did everything. And so when we moved over there, I had to help him in the shop.
did you write?
Yes.
You did. Did you write for the newspaper?
No, I didn't write, but I was correcting the galleys,
Oh,
putting them together. That's where I learned to do it right.
oh, I see.
But we continued on that paper for a long time.
Now, you stayed in San Francisco then, in
We moved to San
in that
Francisco.
home with your boys,
Right,
and he left.
right.
And then how long did you've stayed in San Francisco ever since then, right?
Well, we divorced in 1948.
Uh-huh.
We were on, what street, what was the street?
Valencia, then we moved to Central,
The Central Street.
Central Avenue.
Okay.
Central Avenue.
Now, what did you do to make money during
I
this time?
started to work draperies.
Why did you go into that? Did you have some kind of skill?
I liked it.
Oh, you
Like
just,
sewing.
I like
You
sewing,
just-
and one of my relatives told me
That
that
light is
there's
blinding.
an opening, and if I wanted to work, and I said, yes, I do. So I went to work,
Who's holding it?
learned the trade, and I stayed there for about 6 years. And after that, I started on my own. Started the drapery business. This was in 1938.
Very, very good at it.
Yeah.
Your draper business?
I mean,
58. 1958.
I was gonna say, that's really a feat.
It's a little jump, many years there.
So, and you got into that purely because you like to sew,
that's
right?
right.
Okay.
I like to sew, I like the way the work was coming, and mostly the handwork. And I really did learn everything there.
Did Yaya teach you how to sew initially?
She did.
So
And I
then you
learned in
supported
school.
yourself
I support myself and my 2
and the
boys.
2 boys. Amazing. Now let's go back before, when you were a child, okay? You say that your earliest memories were of that Easter picnic in the Oakland Hills. What else do you remember? That the first try to remember the first recollections you have of Oakland, or of Yaya and Papu, or of the family, the kids.
Well,
What can
I
you
remember, no, I was older than 5 then. I was about 8.
Where?
When we were going to school. And when the kids got in trouble, the girls, if the boys bothered them, they would call on me, because I was a little tomboy.
Oh, yeah, she was our
This was in
defender.
school, huh, Lou?
Huh?
Is this in school or at
In school.
in school?
What do you mean a tomboy?
Well, I was strong.
You mean you could beat somebody
Oh,
out?
yeah, she was a strong one.
Try her out.
I'm not kidding.
I was really strong.
Oh, yeah, she was a terror of the neighborhood. If the kids picked on us, I'm gonna tell my sister Lou on you. They call Lula.
Well, we used to, they had the giant strikes, the ladders hanging from the pole in the yard.
Remember
And we used to hang
the
on
rings
them.
with the rings?
Oh, yes,
And we'd
okay.
run, and then everybody would be going round. So we got out of the class, we ran for these because so many kids wanted to get on them.
Just so many of them.
And one of the girls grabbed it, and this fellow comes along and takes it from her.
Oh.
So she says, oh, you took my, shot.
My ring, you took my ring.
And she was crying, and I said, what are you doing here? And he started, he swore at me. And I says, who do you think you're, oh, he told me a dirty Greek.
Yeah, that's right. That got her down.
Calling a dirty Greek.
Oh. Right in the kisser.
Boy, you lost it.
Never bothered her again.
So we were taken to the office and reprimanded.
You and who else? The boy?
The fella and I and our witnesses.
Okay.
And that was finished with that. But we used to get into other
What
little
about
scrapes.
Uncle Gus? I mean, he was older than you are, and he was male. How come he
Well,
wasn't the defender?
I don't remember now whether he, I really don't remember. He was another,
friends, he had his own classes.
we had our own groups.
He probably couldn't be bothered with protecting his sisters anyway, huh?
I guess not.
Either that or, it wasn't at the same scene of the crime, so to
Right,
speak.
yeah. All right. What else do you remember
I
about,
remember
let's say, the
the
birth of my father?
At home, I remember
sure
they
you
used to
remember that.
get Gus and I to wrestle. I was around 7 at that time too. We used to wrestle on the floor, and I'd win him.
So I
Mom, did you say that Gus used to hop the trains or something like that and take off?
That was later
on
on.
the, that was
When he was
on
older,
Chestnut Street.
16, 17.
I just asked you if you could remember the birth of the next baby after you, but then I realized that you were too young to remember. Which one do you remember being
Oh,
born?
any of us? Me.
Oh, I remember, yes. I
You don't remember mine? As
remember.
long as it's my birthday and we're celebrating my
Yeah.
birthday, she can tell you about when I was born.
Flo.
Tell Mama what Mama was doing, Lou.
She was making the margaritas. I've heard the
Tell Mama
stories.
what Mama was doing when I was born.
What was she doing?
Tell us that, Angie.
They remember more of the stories than I do.
Yeah, well, don't you remember? She was fixing the margarita because it was
Oh, that's
Easter.
right, yes. It was Easter, and she was preparing everything.
Midnight, at least.
Midnight, and all of a sudden she gets these pains and she hollers, "The baby's coming, the baby's coming, eres tu pedí."
And we had, at that time, we had a close friend, Xidis. They're not
Xidis,
related,
yeah,
but they were
Xidis.
friends who were over for margarita. So what did she
So
do?
they
She
brought
sent
in,
Papa.
they
Sent
sent
Papa for the doctor.
For the doctor, and he comes with,
No, the doctor wasn't even there yet, you told me.
No, the doctor wasn't there, but,
She did not, took the baby.
that's right. And Mrs. Xidis, our aunt, let's say, took the baby.
No, no, friend.
Do you remember the doctor's name?
Dr. Moyer.
Moyer.
But he came
Oh,
later.
he wasn't, okay, so this was, okay, he came later,
As
right?
Lou has told me this in the years when she remembered this, she was outside the door and she could hear Mama's yells every now and then.
Yeah.
And she was trembling, she was scared. Then all of a sudden she hears me crying.
I
You know,
love
the
my
baby.
mother, another thing, I love my mother, and I couldn't hear her crying and hollering in there.
It bothered her.
See, it bothered me so much, and they wouldn't let me go in. And I was pounding on the door, and I
The
said,
doctor wasn't
"You
there
can't
when
go
I was
in."
born. But he
And so
came
I
soon.
sat right on the floor outside the door until the baby was born, and finally everything was cleared up and cleaned up, and they let me go in. So that's when I saw the baby. And
Good, that's your
Yes,
first
yours,
recollection
she
of the
was,
first birth.
recollection.
Yeah, she was 8 months.
And Lula, did you feel like you were not just a daughter to Yaya, but also like a sister?
Yes, I did.
Because you were
Very close.
the oldest daughter and you had to help out. Did she ever share with you a lot of her feelings about leaving Greece, ever? Did she ever say anything to you
Well,
about...
she was, no, she used to tell us her story.
Did she regret
Well,
leaving Greece, or was she happy
No,
that
she
she
did
left?
not regret
Papu
leaving
too?
Greece.
What
No,
about
he
Papu?
never did either.
Did they ever want to go back to live there?
Not to live there, but to take trips, yes. They went back several times.
Can you tell me what kind of a person Papu was?
Papu was a wonderful person. He was happy-go-lucky, his home was always full. He wanted company around him all the time. Anybody that came to the house, he
Open-hearted. He
wouldn't
did a lot for our
leave,
community.
without dinner.
He's one of
And
the
he did a
founders
lot
of
for
our
the
big church.
community,
Yeah.
on plays. and-
Was he? Did you feel very close to him as a
Yes,
daughter?
I did, we did too.
Could you always talk to him openly?
Not openly.
Yeah.
My mother was.
But always to Yaya.
Yeah.
Now, how do you see Yaya today? Is it any different than you saw her when you were a young girl?
Well, only that I had a great love for her, and I still love her memories.
And what kind of a person would, if some stranger came up to you and said, "Tell me about your mother," what was she like? What would you say?
I'd say she was a lovely person, a
Very
good mother,
strong person.
a strong person who cared for her family.
She was really
Her
the,
family came
what
first.
do you call it, the
She went to work to
person who
help out
holds
the
everything
family.
together.
And adored her husband like no other lady I know.
That was the next thing I want to get to, because it seems to me that was unusual in that age. In
Yes,
that
they were
time.
very close.
Well,
For,
they're married for
My
love,
mom and
that's
dad
one
were very
thing.
close.
You see, which was unusual in those years.
That's
People
what
were
I'm
married
saying.
with
Right.
matchmaking.
yeah, yeah. So Papu married Yaya was a disadvantage to him because Yaya did not have a dowry.
Dowry.
No dowry,
That's
and he
right.
didn't
But he
care
married her
because-
anyway.
Because he loved her, he didn't care for a dowry.
Did you see very much physical affection with them as you were growing up? Were they
Yes.
demonstrative in front of
Well,
the
he never
kids?
pinched her in front of us, but
But you can prove they loved each other.
Did they?
we know he did.
Did they? I mean, was there a lot of touching that went on? And did you guys always touch and kiss? I mean, it was always, real
Oh, yes, all the
gusto-y
time.
and all that.
All the time, that's why the whole family is like that.
That's for sure.
Kiss each other.
And Papa was the big cheese. Believe me, he was a big cheese.
Well, we were brought up to Papu or Papa, I mean, not Pateras.
So Yaya,
to Baba,
did Yaya give you that? Even though Yaya was
The
the
impression,
one,
oh yes, the
even
impression we
though-
got from my mother that Papa was the big cheese of the
Papa
family.
was the king.
but actually
he had the
Yaya,
last word,
Yaya was
taught us. That
Yaya was the one who was the rock of the family.
That's right.
But made you feel as though
Papu
Papu.
was the rock.
Absolutely.
But
Why?
it took two of them to do it. though.
Why did she do that?
Because she adored the ground he walked on.
Sure.
I mean, she wouldn't let us kids sit down to supper unless Papa was there with us.
And where was
And we
he?
waited until 9 or 9:30 in the evening sometimes for supper.
Where was he?
Because Papu, after work, would go up to the cafeteria and play a little babuski.
But when he died.
And when he came home, what did
And then
Yaya
we
say
could
to
eat
him?
nothing. Then the stew and the salads and the
Everything came on
jalapeno
the
with
table.
everything.
We had to wait.
And we'd say, coffee,
We're hungry, Papa.
we're hungry.
All right. Take a piece of bread.
Did he treat the girls any differently than the boys?
No, not really.
No.
Well, yeah, I think
Which
so.
way?
Well, I think the boys were a little
Well, the
more-
boys
In the-
had a higher score than the girls
Right.
did because they were boys and they were going to carry the name.
always in the
For
old
that
days.
reason only, not that they were any better than we were, but in that respect, boys were boys and still
Girls
is
were
to some extent in some families now.
Well, now I've been told that my father finished high school.
Yeah, in fact, didn't he go to college?
He
Yeah.
went to
Oh,
college.
yeah.
Now, how
went to
come he
college.
got to do it and you guys
And so did
didn't?
Milton.
Oh, boys had to have education.
Okay,
They
now
had
girls-
support,
All right.
a wife.
You know what my
But
mother
girls had to be housewives.
And you know what my mother told my principal who came and begged her? He said I had a very high IQ and it was a sin to make me quit going through, well, high school then they called it. No, what do they call
Junior
it?
high.
Junior high.
Junior high was the time.
Still is.
And my teacher, Mrs. Crawford, this lovely red-headed teacher that I adored. My mother said, oh no, girls don't need education. They gonna get married, they
Yeah,
all
learn
they
to
have to
cook.
do is learn to cook.
And
take
so-
care of their husband and have children.
Those days I didn't believe that.
See, and that was not anything else in all families.
Well, that was the education that
That
girls
era.
needed.
You went into your own business and you went into your own business and did you?
Poor me.
Wait a minute, but you did work. You
Oh, I
you
worked
were-
in the shipyard.
Okay, now wait. Yaya tells you you're not supposed to have an education because all you're going to do is stay home at work.
Oh,
and
yeah, but
Yaya
see, now-
supported you guys to both to have your own businesses.
Well, that was her own decision.
But I mean, Yaya had to have
She was older,
supported
she
it.
was married.
I was married.
Yeah.
And when she went into business, actually,
It was my
when she
own
was into
decision.
business, she was divorced.
I was divorced when I went to business.
Now, in my case, when I went into business, it was just a streak of luck. They were selling the beauty shop I was working for. It was cheap. I bought it. That's
Well,
all
how
I know.
did Yaya feel about the two of you being
Well, now wait a
your own
minute, me
bosses?
taking up the beauty course was my mother's advice.
Don't forget.
But
Excuse me.
regardless.
This was my mother's advice.
I know.
You see, when I was pulled out of school in the 10th grade, I finished the 10th grade and then that was enough. There was 2 more years to go to finish high school. But my yaya said, that's enough, that's enough. You learn a trade, so you'll have something in case you get married and you ever lose your husband, you'll have something to fall back on.
Oh, okay, so she gave
So
you
I
that.
like to do everybody's hair, so I went and took up the beauty course.
And before that, though, you were singing.
Oh, I won the scholarship when I was in the 10th grade.
And then my
I won a
father-
vocal scholarship, the Atwater Kent Scholarship, which gave me a year's free lessons for boys.
And then they
Los
paid for
Angeles.
them.
And then for a year I had free lessons, and so that was still during Depression years, okay? That was in the mid-30s, 1936. And that was, after I finished the whole year with my teacher, I was ready to quit. And Papu wouldn't hear of it.
Yeah, he wanted her to continue.
No, he wanted me to continue.
I remember
Teacher
they
wanted
paid
to
for
take you to
lessons.
Los
Well, that was
Angeles.
after.
Oh,
First, Papu wanted to, but Papu said, you're not gonna quit, how much does he want?
Yeah.
So he made his lessons $5 a month, once a week.
I remember that.
And I took my lessons, and I got little jobs with the Greek radio hour, I got paid for that. I was singing every Sunday on the Greek radio hour. Different little things that I would sing and I would get paid for to help some of my lessons.
Now, if Papu was of the mind that a woman shouldn't be out of the house, why did he encourage you to develop your
He loved
voice?
music.
This was a little different, see.
This is a little different, this is a profession.
This is theater or
This is
what?
a profession. Papu was a theater.
Yeah, I was Papu's
Right.
star.
yeah, he was.
Right. So anyhow, when my teacher wanted me to sign me up and take me to Hollywood, because he was getting a job at a university to be a professor in Hollywood, and he wrote this contract, and he was willing with his wife to take care of me and
Developer boy.
develop me for the concert field, and brought the contract home. My God, there was a big, everybody sat down and read the contract, and everybody got a different viewpoint of the contract. And of course, no, I couldn't go.
Because it was
My daughter's gonna go away
Oh, no, go away from
No.
home, single, are you kidding?
My poo put his
Forget
foot
it.
down.
No, so that was the end of my voice
Career.
lessons, although I did get into the San Francisco Opera Chorus, I sang there. But then I continued on, you see, with my working as a beautician. That's when I went into getting my license as a beautician. So we get back to Lula now.
Well, that's what the question that I asked is if Papu
Oh, but-
treated the boys differently from the girls. And you answered my other question, did Yaya treat you differently from the boys? Obviously, she had the same
Same feeling.
opinion
Same
that
feeling.
Papu did.
And she used to tell us, I have 5 fingers. If I have 5 children, I love them all the same. She would tell us. And we would kid her.
No, in other words, if she cut off one finger, it's going to hurt just as much as the other finger. That's why she'd point to her fingers as her children. And if she cut this one, it would hurt, and if she cut this one, it would hurt. So no matter which one she cut, it would hurt.
The same.
Right.
Not all the children. Can we stop now, honey?
Yes.
Yes.
So
So
let's
let's
just
wind it up here.
Have to get the church in.
I think they're so interested. Now they want to leave.
Yeah, and Lula just said she wanted to stop.
Yeah, I just endings.
4th, and then the daughter somewhere in between was Maria.